everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and welcome to another live stream. Hoping everyone's having a good week so far. It's been cold here in North Carolina, lots of snow. Gonna fix my background. It's never quite right whenever I do this. We'll go with that. No, that's the same. Whatever. I'll be smaller anyway. So welcome, everybody. As the title indicates, we're going to be talking about investigative genetic genealogy for today's stream. Doesn't mean I won't be answering questions from chat and all of that, so feel free to ask your questions. But just figured, I've been doing a lot of different things lately where I've been talking more about it, investigative genetic genealogy, that is, and I figured I'll do a live stream about that. So that's what we're going to do today. We'll just kind of talk about that stuff. If you have questions about investigative genetic genealogy, definitely ask them in chat. I'm going to try to focus on those questions, obviously, since that's the aim here. Part of the reason why I figured I'd also do this is I have a video that'll be coming out soon. In the editing process, not sure how easy it's going to be for me because I've never really done the whole clipping stuff from Netflix before, but I'm going to be doing that review of The Breakthrough. So it's recorded, just needs to be edited, but I need to figure that part out. We're going to talk about investigative genetic genealogy, but first we'll do a quick run through of all of our hellos and all of that while we let people kind of start coming on in. Tasha Carl, hello from snowy, finally, Minnesota. Enjoy watching these, helps me figure out how to work on my family tree. Well, very cool. Thank you for joining, Tasha. Then Gazillion had his question about my Nunes Vaz family, which I did answer here, sort of just a minimal answer, but yeah, so just a question about my Nunes Vaz family, how far back it goes. And yeah, confidently, we have records 1600s Livorno, early 1600s. I can't remember if any of them date back to the late 1500s, but the only places that we have possible connections to based on records and books available seems to be Villarreal and Cadiz. So, yeah. James Burton, hi from London, UK. Hello, James. Oh, and I skipped this from the Jedi Truth. Jarrett in the thumbnail looks as smooth as a baby's bottom. Yeah, I've been playing around with different filter stuff for the thumbnails because, that's just one thing is not trying to make me look like a certain way, but really just trying to make a unique look to the thumbnails so that I don't know, it's something that I've noticed a lot of other YouTubers do where they have various ways that they have people looking on the thumbnails, sometimes cartoony, sometimes kind of a specific sort of weird filter. But yeah, I don't know, just playing around with that. Jumping back down, Texas Game Mom, hello. Thank you for joining. Julia Joyce, hello from North Baddesley, Hampshire. Well, hello, Julia. Wonderful to have you as always. And we have got Karma Gal in early. Hello from Nebraska. Hello, Karma. Good to have you. Eric Sheridan coming in from Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you for joining, Eric. One of our wonderful mod admins, Charlie Oliver, who just had his birthday the other day. So happy birthday, belated. I know I said a happy birthday in the Discord to you, but happy birthday. Stig, hi from Oslo, Norway. Hey, Stig, good to have you. Our Scandinavian representation in here. Callum Tate, hello. Hey, Callum, good to have you. DJ's Variety Channel, hello. Good to have you. And then we have our first question, Colin. What are the general ethics in IgG? So that's actually a really good question because this is something that, I think for a lot of people, it kind of worries them about that there's not really any set laws in place and things like that. And so when it comes to ethics in IgG, a lot of people have issues with certain things going on. In terms of general ethics, I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Part of it is I'm not quite sure exactly what part of general ethics you're talking about. There's a lot of pieces to it, in terms of, I know a big piece is, in terms of law enforcement accessing the databases. And then that gets into the ethics about informed consent in terms of opting in and opting out, which for everyone who's on YouTube, which is the majority of people watching right now, I've had a poll going about whether or not have you opted in your DNA for law enforcement access in either Family Tree DNA or GEDmatch. And there's 3 options, yes, no, and I haven't done a DNA test, and I see it's actually, I'm surprised it's 45% yes, but that might just be because of the bias of my audience, because I'm guessing a lot of my audience are very pro IgG, and at the very least, I mean, only 16% of the people watching, or at least that have taken the poll, haven't done a DNA test. So definitely a bias there. But yeah, I mean, I guess if let's try to get a little bit more specific, possibly. I'll keep an eye out for that. We'll jump through and let's see. I don't see you posted again, but yeah, I mean, in general ethics, I think there's a lot of different pieces to it, because I know another part of the general ethics that, a lot of people ask about, which doesn't really have to do with the genealogy side of things. It has to do with the forensic DNA testing from police, but that's surreptitious testing. So that's basically when they get a not surreptitious testing, but surreptitious DNA sampling. So what that is they have a suspect they're trying to get DNA from. They get the DNA in a way that's not straightforward. So basically, like, they follow the person, wait for them to throw a cigarette out, and then they grab that cigarette and take it. And then, sometimes, like, I know they show this a lot in TV shows. I don't know how often they actually do this, but like they'll, have the guy in the interrogation room drinking water from something, and then they go to throw it away for him, and instead they put it in an evidence bag or something like that. So lots of parts to it. But Nick Brokema, goedenavond van Groningen. Hello, Nick, hoe gaat het? Hope you're doing well. I always try to think of other stuff to say in Dutch, and it's like I need to do more conversational Dutch. Yeah. What would it be? Ik heb praten meer nodig. that probably didn't make any sense, but maybe it did. Maybe it made just enough sense. I don't know. I need to speak more Dutch. Yeah. All right. Callum Tate. Yes, I watched The Breakthrough. Yeah, it was a really good show. Definitely some issues, but you'll have to watch the video for all of that stuff. Dan Edwards. Hola, ¿cómo está? Jordan Yaros, hi. Alexandra, hello, everyone from Germany. Hello, Alexandra, good to have you. Callum Tate was wondering what your thoughts were on it. Well, you will get to find out. John Big Booty, hello from Texas. Hello, John, good to have you. Jen W, hi from Melbourne, Australia. Very good to have you. What time would it be there? I guess it's like real early in the morning, 7 a.m.-ish or something. I've been starting to get a bit more familiar with Australian time this week, because I got accepted to this interesting program called the EduTuber Accelerator Program, which is like sponsored by YouTube, Electrify, and Changer, these 3 different companies. And so, yeah, I haven't put any announcement stuff out. They sent us stuff if we wanted to announce it, but I might as well mention here. So that was kind of cool. But it's like based out, the company Changers largely based out of Australia. So yeah. Rob, evening, nice map of Amsterdam. Yeah, thank you. If I can't think of anything in terms of a map to like do that's different, I always kind of default to Amsterdam, because I don't know, I just feel such a strong tie, especially here-ish, the Jewish neighborhoods. And Voyenberg is, I think, is this Voyenberg? Can't remember which one. Voyenbach. Julia, I've opted in on both sites. I'm not sure if it can be used with British law. I don't believe the UK police are utilizing it, but what the law in your country is in terms of that doesn't really matter. It still can be accessed by others accessing the database. So like when I was doing investigative genetic genealogy, we saw the matches from all over the world that were opted in. Although one thing on GEDmatch that a lot of people don't realize is that for GEDmatch, the opt-in, opt-out only applies to investigative genetic genealogy for violent crimes cases. So like the murders and rapes and things like that, that's the one that you have to opt in for law enforcement to be able to access it. For DOE cases, that is not the case. So if it's an unknown human remains, basically DOE cases is what they're also called, then that is going to be something on GEDmatch that if you're not opted in, you can still be accessed as long as you're opted into the regular part of the database, because you can upload your DNA to GEDmatch and have it as private so nobody can find you as a match, but you can still access some of the tools for different things. So yeah. Eric Sheridan, thoughts on the DNA analyst in Colorado charged with manipulating evidence? Yeah, so I've definitely seen stuff about that because it was CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigations, and yeah, I haven't been following it too much. Yeah, Missy Woods, that's it. This is getting into more of the general side of forensic DNA testing and not as much in terms of investigative genetic genealogy, but the worlds do touch a little bit because we deal with a lot of DNA analysts because they're the ones who, when the DNA is first extracted, they create an autosomal STR profile, and the DNA analysts are the ones to analyze that to create the STR profile. And then they're also kind of the ones handling all of the DNA forensic side of things. They testify in a lot of court cases. And so just share this. So this is been a big thing going on. A lot of her cases are being reanalyzed and it's a big deal. Now this is just something that can happen, I think, anywhere in terms of whether it be just law enforcement or the general world of just people doing things very underhandedly and kind of breaking the rules and all of that. And I don't know the exact details of everything. Let's see if we can find a forensic magazine that talks about it. It's all these news organizations. Oh, here we go. Here's something that I was looking at. Okay. So this is from the actual Colorado Bureau of Investigations. Wow, 102 charges filed. Yeah. So intern research project. So it was discovered in 2023. Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what she did. I know she did a lot. She lied about a lot of stuff. But yeah. So interesting piece to bring up. Karma Gal, I need to watch The Breakthrough. My dad gave me permission right away to opt into the permission for law enforcement to use his on 23andMe. He said if they're going to catch someone, so be it. Yeah, that's honestly how a lot of people feel. It's like if your relative did something terrible and murdered someone or raped someone or kidnapped someone or whatever, would you want to make sure that they go behind bars as well and stuff? And I want to I don't want to give too much away, but I think it's kind of an interesting thing that's not discussed but is forced into your thinking at the end of The Breakthrough, because they kind of hit on the fact of people who do DNA testing, whose DNA test is then utilized to put one of their relatives away. I know, I did that reaction on about the Baby Garnett case not too long ago, which was kind of all about that too. But in the show, they do it in a very interesting way that kind of hits a lot of things that I'll talk about in my video. But that's one thing I've definitely found a lot of people feel is similar to kind of what your dad says. And then on the other side too, is that family tree DNA, you have to opt in for DOE cases. So opting in on family tree DNA also is going to make it very useful in terms of identifying relatives of yours that might have died somewhere and went unidentified for just whatever reason. And I mean, there are so many DOE cases. It's crazy. 04 Lightning fan, hello from Tampa Bay. I'm making progress on my pre-1850 Cortland County, New York family. Feeling good. Very cool. Very cool. Well, good luck on the rest of that research. Hopefully it keeps going well. Texas Game Mom, I had to say no because I didn't test with Family Tree and never uploaded a GEDmatch. You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually thought about making that part of the poll as an option of kind of like not in the law enforcement databases. Then I just decided not to because with these polls that I've run so many times, not in lives, but just general polls, when you word stuff a little too much, it like there's so many interpretations and people will interpret it all over the place. Yeah. DJ's Variety Channel. Are there any organizations with accreditation or certification for forensic investigative genetic genealogists? I guess my dogs didn't like that question. There aren't quite yet, but there are boards that are being there's different boards of certification that are being created for this. I'm gonna try to find one. Because after I left DNA Labs International, the company that I had been working for, I basically was approached by one of the people from one of the boards that was basically saying, you know, we're trying to come up with a test. Would you be willing to be one of the people to like take it as a sample so you could give feedback on what we might want to add or take away or something? I was like, oh yeah, definitely. So I still have yet to hear from them about that. But it's definitely been a major part of it. Yeah, the Investigative Genetic Genealogy Accreditation Board. And so they're just, I mean, there's a couple of different of these boards. If I remember correctly, the thing that I always thought was funny, which kind of has been a theme that a lot of people don't realize for IGG, is that there's the forensic world's way of thinking, and then there's the genealogist world's way of thinking. And they don't always mesh. And so there's a lot of different opinions about stuff, especially when it comes down to certain ways things might be utilized or just like basic accreditation sort of things. And so what sort of happened was there were two accreditation boards that I noticed became the two main ones. I don't remember what they were called. Oh my gosh, I just realized I'm sharing this completely incorrectly and nobody's able to see the screen that I'm sharing. My bad. Here we go. There we go. This is what I was talking about. The Investigative Genetic Genealogy board. I'm going to share this in the chat. But basically there were like two boards I remember being created. One that was largely genealogists and the other that was largely forensic side scientists, like a lot of DNA analysts and basically people that have been in the forensic DNA field for a long time, largely working with autosomal STR profiles, Y chromosome STR profiles, a little bit with mitochondrial DNA, and kind of, you know, working a lot of the forensic, you know, the legal side of things, not just cold case stuff too, you know. And yeah, so there's like different ways of thinking about things, and there's a lot of stuff that went on in that world in a lot of ways that as IGG built, the labs needed to learn about each other. So like a great example of this is that for typical genealogy labs doing autosomal SNP testing, you know, the typical Ancestry type of test and 23andMe type of test, all that, what's known as autosomal SNP, they aren't testing for non-human DNA. So like when one of the useful things when it comes to DNA is how much DNA is there. And so there was kind of an issue because they didn't really at the beginning have that ability to easily sort of tell like, oh, non-human DNA. And it's not like it would read animal DNA or something like that and, you know, create a wrong profile, it would basically create a profile that would be, I don't know exactly what kind of a thing it would create, but basically the main issue that would happen is that when they would get the DNA, they would only measure how much DNA is there, not how much human DNA is there versus non. And so there was like a lot of learning curve in the beginning years. I don't know a lot of the specifics about a lot of this stuff, but basically it was just like a lot of different things that each one needed to figure out, because like for forensic world, they're very used to dealing with samples that have all of these crazy issues, degradation, contamination from all sorts of types of DNA. And so they have a lot of the technology to deal with that. Like, let's say that there's multiple people within a DNA sample. Well, they have technology called STR Mix, which is basically just a program that allows you to do probabilistic genotyping for multiple mixes of different people. So basically, if we're expecting 3 people in this DNA sample, and we have these 2 people that we think are part of the sample, what's the likelihood that it's them? And so there's just a lot of different things on each side that they had to figure out. I don't know if it's still up, but when I was at DNA Labs International, I did a forensic genetic genealogy, or I did a talk about investigative genetic genealogy along with a DNA analyst I worked with named Mary Beth Schiaretta, who it was on Roots Tech, the Roots Tech website. I think it was 2022 or something like that. I don't know if it's still up, but the talk that Mary Beth gives, she goes into a lot of the details about some of the issues that were going on in terms of the difficulties between the genealogy labs and the forensic labs. And that's actually one of the things that they get wrong in the breakthrough, is that I don't know who was their genealogy expert to help them out with things, because I know that they had a consultant who was a genealogist on the show, but I don't know how much experience that genealogist has with IgG, because some of the errors in the show seem to be the types of errors that I would have done before I got into IgG and actually worked in the field. So I do talk about that in the in that upcoming video. All right. 04 Lightning fan, IgG has come up in the Koberger case in Idaho. Yeah, it has. I've not been following that case very much, so I don't know enough about it. Unfortunately. Gen W 8 a.m. So okay, that's what it is in Melbourne. Okay. Antonio Deleche. Hello from London. Did I say is it Deleche or Deleche, or I don't know. Yeah. Oh, and my dad's here. Hey, Pops. Callum Tate, in the breakthrough, they mentioned something about using IgG not complying with GDPR law. Was that true? And if so, has that law changed, and when has it changed? So I don't know the complete answer to this. I do know that the GDPR laws do include a lot of information about genetic data. So I don't know exactly how they work, but I'm trying to think if I know of any places that have used IgG in Europe. They've been using IgG in Australia. And they did have an actual solve in Sweden, which I think this is kind of this show is based on. But I honestly don't know. That's a good question. That's something I should probably look into the GDPR law, because I know whenever I talk about the law in the U.S., GINA, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, that law is all about protecting people from being discriminated against based on their DNA. Basically, like, do you have a pre-existing condition and stuff like that, and things like that, yeah. But GDPR is kind of like has the equivalent of that in Europe. But it includes a lot more than just that part. So yeah, interesting. Connie Money, I opted in everywhere I could. If my DNA ID someone, wonderful. Definitely agree. Neek Brokema, your head is just in front of my ancestor's house on Vormastrat. Vorm Oeststraat? What is Oest? So like warm Vorm Oeststraat. Interesting. What does that mean? Let me know. Oh my gosh, I'm 14 minutes behind. Okay, I'm gonna try to jump ahead. How much? Oh, I don't have too much. Oh, yeah, the Rick Ross is here. That's right. My dad is the Rick Ross. Eric, the Lady of the Dunes case was interesting too. I'm not familiar with that one. There are a lot of cases. In all honesty, you know, there were a lot of cases that I worked that I can't even talk about. So you know, it's like even the ones like there's a good amount that I can talk about, but it's like there's so much that, you know, even stuff that by the time I left just, you know, was still in the investigation side of things. So yeah, I'm not familiar with this case, Lady of the Dunes. Let's see who solved it. Identification 2022. Okay, so recently. It's Othram. Okay, yeah, it's part of the DNA Solves website is by a company called Othram, who's a major company in the investigative genetic genealogy world. For one, they do whole genome sequencing at their own lab. They also started their own database, and they've done a lot of solves. I think their head genealogist right now, or their lead genealogist right now, see if we can find it, is Eric Sheridan, who was like, he's a really young genealogist who made the news years ago when I think he was like a young teenager. Let's see. No, that's not it. What is it? Eric something. Eric Schubert. That's who it is. Eric Schubert. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if people recognize him like, oh yeah, I saw that news story about him. So, but I think he's, at least last I saw he was. So yeah. All right. Drea, I'm late. YouTube and Discord notifications didn't show up, but hello everyone. Oh well, hello. I've been hearing from a lot of people that say that they have the notifications turned on, that they still aren't getting them, and yeah, that definitely let me know if they were turned on. Timmy, hello, Timmy. Let's see. This might be off topic, but have you ever worked with Lithuania genealogy? So yes, I have, but it was Lithuanian Jewish genealogy. So I'm not sure if you're talking about non-Jewish Lithuanian ancestry, because a lot of what I was accessing was definitely more on the Jewish Gen website, which obviously is geared towards Jewish. But I remember a lot of stuff was held, I think, by the Polish State Archives, which has a lot of things digitized on Family Search. There's a lot of stuff on Family Search too, but the main area that I was researching in Lithuania was Mariampol, which actually was part of a video that I did where I was tracing the ancestry for Steve Heimler of the YouTube channel Heimler's History. So if anyone's taken any AP history courses, you've probably seen his channel because it's all about AP history stuff. But I talk about that tracing back to like the 1700s, and even talk about how we found indications that one of his ancestors who lived in Mariampol may have been a part of Napoleon's invasion to Russia, and at the very least saw it because the retreat went through Mariampol. So yeah. Irene, late but made it. Well, welcome, Irene. Good to have you, even though it's late, not too late. Okay. Del El Che. Like Che is in Czech. Oh, Cha. Delecha. Delecha. Del Elcha. Del Elcha. Okay. Cool. Callum, I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find anything on it. Interesting. All right. Yeah, Jose Lopez, since I have Italian ancestry, would it come from my paternal grandfather or my great grandfather? I'm still puzzled. I'm not sure if I missed another part of the question, or I don't know. I don't know. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Software Solutions just came in. So if you answered, I'll watch later the whole thing. But if someone wanted to get in the field, what training is mandatory, if any? So the honest truth is that there's no mandatory training necessarily. It's just that there's an expectation of a lot of experience with this type of research. So the way to truly get into the field and truly know what you're doing is to actually work what's known as search angel cases or unknown parentage cases, if you want to be more general in a sense. But basically, unknown parentage cases, you're just helping people who have unknown ancestry, whether they were adopted or found out that their father wasn't their biological father, or just their grandfather was adopted or whatever. Basically, there's unknown ancestry, so you use the DNA test to help identify that. Now, you may already have a lot of experience with that, and if that's the case and you're just trying to kind of get your chops a bit more in terms of like the specific forensic side of things, there are a lot of different things you can do. The probably one of the best ways to do it, because it really gets your foot in the door in terms of networking with the right people, is taking one of the two available college courses for this, which you don't have to be part of the college to do, but the University of New Haven and Ramapo College in New Jersey are the two that have programs. So those are long programs. They usually have internships from them. In fact, when I was a lead investigative genetic genealogist at DNA Labs International, I probably ended up taking like 6 or 8 different interns under my wing throughout that time. And a good amount of them came from some of those programs. So that's a bunch of ways to get in. Some of the other things you can do, make sure that you start going to genealogy conferences and possibly even start looking into forensic-based conferences that relate to genealogy. So one that might be a good one to try, but forensic conferences are kind of expensive. But the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, AAFS, that was one where it's that's really geared towards people that are like especially graduating with forensic degrees and trying to get jobs and stuff like that. But if you're a genetic genealogist who has experience with search angel work and unknown parentage work, and you've done a lot of cases with that, years of work with it, honestly, then you can go to that and kind of see what's going on. A lot of the companies that are in IGG have booths there. I ran a couple of DNA Lab International booths at a lot of these different conferences. Another one was the International Symposium for Human Identification, or what they call ISHI, ISHI. But the forensic conferences are a little bit more expensive than genealogy conferences, which are kind of expensive in of themselves as well. But there's definitely a lot of ways to get in. And then you can also look around for just one-off programs. There's a lot of investigative genetic genealogists who do talks. There's a lot of the companies in the field who will host webinars. A great example is QIAGEN/Verigen, the company which owns GEDmatch. So Verigen owns GEDmatch and QIAGEN owns Verigen. So it's like, the fun of corporate structure. But they do webinars all the time that talk about all of that, but often they have stuff geared towards IGG as well. So a lot of ways to kind of get your foot in the door, but really the two main things: get experience with actual unknown parentage work, and do one of those main courses, the University of New Haven's course, or Ramapo College, which Ramapo, I think it's Ramapo. I feel like every time I think that it's pronounced one way, they're like, no, it's the other way. And then I always forget. But as I always say, I'm not really known for proper pronunciation. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Roxanne, hello from Minneapolis. Hello, Roxanne. Good to have you. Thank you for joining. Okay, Timmy, my ancestors were Roman Catholic Lithuanians. Yeah, so you'll need to look into some of that in terms of, what's available for Roman Catholic, but a lot of that stuff that is around the time when civil registration becomes much bigger, which kind of often comes with Napoleon. He was a big proponent for that. He brought a lot of that throughout Europe. But then you'll kind of get the non-religious breakdowns of things. And I think it was Russian Empire. So you'll probably find them in revision lists. You'll probably find them in like just all sorts of places. So yeah, you can find a lot. And yeah, cool. My grandfather's side is from is in Mariupol. Very cool. Yeah. Well, if you know that side was there during the time of the invasion, they would have been in the town when Napoleon was retreating through the town. And I think there's even a painting of of Napoleon's army retreating through Mariupol specifically. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Eric Sheridan, FTDNA mitochondrial DNA updates coming next month. Yes, you are correct. I saw that update. I'm guessing that's coming from the Million Mito Project, which is a project Family Tree DNA has been running to try to get more people to do mitochondrial DNA testing. Because the thing is that at this point, mitochondrial DNA testing has some genealogical usefulness, but it's very, very minimal. And out of the three main types of testing, autosomal testing, Y testing, and mitochondrial DNA testing, mitochondrial DNA is by far the least genealogically useful. So a lot of people have been trying to get more people to test, because the more people to test, the more we can start to figure out ways we might be able to see through comparisons how we are related. And so I think that's kind of part of their update, is like that they have a lot more testers, and that they've been working in the background to figure out a lot of things, and they're going to roll a lot of that stuff out pretty soon. So yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to. Nick, the Vormosstraat is one of the oldest streets in Amsterdam, and the name originates from Vormos, so it's not Vorm like warm, but Vormos, an Old Dutch word for both vegetable dish and a vegetable garden. Niet groente, or I guess what? Geen groente, groente niet. I don't know. But okay, interesting. Vormos. Okay. All right. I see a lot of talk about haplogroups, which my mitochondrial DNA haplogroup is H1AI1, and then my dad's mitochondrial haplogroup is K1A9, I think. Something like that. So, all right. I forgot I changed my name on here. This is Steven from North Dakota, and finally we have almost as much snow as Florida. Nice. Yeah, I know you all have been worried about that. Yeah. OE in modern Dutch sounds like cool. Ooh. Oh, yeah. What words? Yeah, I guess groente. I just said one. Yeah, groente. And groente. Yeah, cool. Yeah, because I also had to learn that OO is like O, like roll. Because het parole, I pronounced for years het parole. Because in cool is obviously the US style. All right. I see a lot of chatting about everyone's different stuff. So no questions necessarily. So yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm like for a loss for words right now. But so I guess we can talk about just kind of the process of investigative genetic genealogy in general too, because I feel like a lot of people don't really know the process that super well, because you kind of think about it generally as just like DNA testing, but like the general process basically goes, first you have the actual DNA or the evidence that has DNA, and law enforcement will usually meet with a forensic lab to kind of discuss what they have and figure out what's going on. The lab will then do the extraction of the DNA and then get a measurement of how much DNA there is and kind of how degraded they think it might be. And they also create that autosomal STR profile, which is not the same thing as a genealogy profile. The autosomal SNP profiles for genealogy. So SNP versus STR. So the difference is SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism, a single nucleotide, a single spot on the genome. Polymorphism basically just referring to that if there's a change at that letter from the comparison profile, then that means that something, it indicates something. And so we use strings of those to figure out genealogy. STR, short tandem repeats, that's multiple nucleotides in a row on the genome where they repeat. So, you have adenine, guanine, cytosine, and oh God, I'm always so bad with this, but ACTG. And so, you might have it repeating ACT, 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 ACT. So short tandem repeat. So that's only doing like 13 spots of those. So when you're doing autosomal STR, it's way less DNA you're utilizing than the genealogy stuff, which uses 700,000 SNPs, those single nucleotide polymorphisms. So once they do the extraction of DNA and get the measurement and all that, then they need to figure out what type of testing are they going to do, because there's different types of testing. First of all, there's the microarray SNP testing, the typical sort of 700,000 SNPs, but that's the one that takes the most DNA to do. So you need a good amount of DNA to be able to get a viable profile from that. The next one is whole genome sequencing, which can be done with less DNA, and it gets much more in terms of, it also gets like a lot of the Y chromosome, the X chromosomes, and the mitochondrial DNA. But I think it is a bit more expensive. I can't remember if that's still the case. But basically, it takes a little less DNA. But then there's a third option, which was the newest one, which is Kintelligence. And Kintelligence is something where they are using only 10,230 SNPs, which is just over 1% of the amount of SNPs that they use for typical autosomal DNA testing, the typical Ancestry and 23andMe and stuff like that. And so I actually happen to be the genealogist who has the first solve using Kintelligence. For a while, I was the genealogist who had the most solves using Kintelligence. I don't know if that's still the case now that I've been kind of out of the field for over a year. But let's see, is this? Yeah. So this is one of the articles about some of the cases that we had worked on with Kintelligence. And basically, Kintelligence is just really, really new. A lot of people don't know about it. And it's something that I talk about in my talk about the future of genealogy, because it's something where once it reaches the consumer market, that's going to make the ability to do what's known as artifact testing much easier. Artifact testing basically being like, let's say you have your grandmother's dentures. Maybe there's DNA from grandma still in there and you can get a DNA profile for her. That's what artifact testing is. But it's very difficult because very degraded DNA and very low amounts of DNA are hard to get a viable profile for. So Kintelligence basically takes that to a new level. And there were multiple cases that we solved. So these are two that they talk about. This one from Oregon, where we were able to identify unknown human remains, which was Tanny's latch, Tana. There was also this case, which I've talked about a bit, the case of Debbie Lynn Randall, a 9-year-old girl who was abducted and murdered in Georgia. And we were able to get that using a Kintelligence kit. And a big part of this is really important because with that low amount of DNA and degraded DNA for these cases, without this type of testing, it probably wouldn't be possible. So just something, I guess, to talk about while I wait for people to ask any sort of questions and all of that. Yeah, let's see. Jose Lopez, who in my family can I ask for help with any research about other relatives? I mean, anybody, honestly. I mean, especially whatever specific questions you have, whoever might be closest or know the most. That might be the ones, but really just anybody. Anyone in your family might have the answers to something that you might not realize. Went down the wrong way. Okay. Yeah, one thing that you can also do if you're gonna talk to relatives. Oof. All right. One thing you can do is ask them to look in their basements and their attics for any sort of boxes they might have inherited from family, because a lot of times people will have like photos and other stuff that they don't even realize they have. All right. My ancestors also lived on the Vormus Strat. Used to be a posh street to live in long ago. Interesting. Okay, let's see. You want to talk about stuff? All right, cool. Well, yeah, if anyone does have questions, ask away. Especially investigative genetic genealogy. I guess while things are a little quiet right now, I should mention next week I will not be streaming on the reaction channel. I will be streaming on this channel again, but I will have Max Miller on the stream, and we will be chatting about his family history, and we're going to be talking about what he was thinking through a lot of it when I came out to Phoenix and all of that. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So make sure you mark your calendars for next week, which it's going to be a little bit later in the day than when I usually stream. But yeah. Drea, that's how I ended up with all the photos I've acquired, and then my great aunt says she'll give me more. It is a great way to get a lot of photos. Just asking, just like when I would reach out to a lot of cousins, I realized that was kind of one of the big things I wanted. Like, I'd reach out to cousins and be like, well, why are you reaching out to me? And it's like, well, I'm reaching out, one, because I'm doing all this work on the family tree and I really enjoy sharing it with all of the family, because why let this work go to waste? Let as much of the family enjoy it. But on top of that, I'm seeking out any photographs from other family members that might be able to show us, older ancestors, or, even help. Maybe they have documents or things with them. So yeah, I was able to get a lot through that as well. Maven, Genie, Batman solving crimes again. Yeah, not quite. I've told people in the industry that I'm not 100% out. If anyone ever wants to contract me to do work on cases one-off and stuff, certainly more than willing. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone reaches out to me for help on a Jewish case or something like that, because when it comes to dealing with endogamy, that's a very difficult thing. So if they ever get a DNA profile that shows largely Jewish, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I know when I put that video out of why I stopped, why I quit investigative genetic genealogy, it definitely went a little more hardcore than I necessarily felt, in terms of like, oh, it's so much dealing with all of this stuff and, all the crazy, things that you see that's happening in the world. And it's like, it's definitely a part of it. But when I rewatched the video, I remember being like, oh, wow, this definitely makes it seem like that was like really killing me. And it was part of it. It was part of it, but not quite as much as that. Yeah. What are the names of his ancestors? Because my ancestors regenten. They were reigning. Is that what that regenten? Is that it? Or I guess, I don't know. I guess regent. Timmy, love the video. I saw you wrote it in Genealogy Discord. That's cool, Rob. Rob and Neek might be 16th cousins. Very cool. Waiting for my family tree DNA Big Y to finally process. Yeah, the Big Y is a fun one to go through with the block tree and like the ancestral tree and seeing yourself in the phylogenetic tree. It is kind of cool. Like even if you don't get close matches, to kind of be like, oh wow, this is how I connect into the entire world family tree. So, Dre, have you done any work with descendancy research for particular population groups, enslaved people, mystery burials, etc.? What's that like? I mean, I've done a ton of descendancy research for all sorts of stuff. And I guess I don't know, I mean, I've done them especially for, my own family and all that, but I mean, descendancy research is like the thing for unknown parentage work and investigative genetic genealogy work, and like this type of genetic genealogy research is you're doing tons and tons of building out family trees to ancestors that you then build down from and build out all of their descendants to find them. And I've done that, also in real life for friends looking for family or, things like that. So, I even, I've even helped out some of the YouTubers who've been on my series who had relatives they were trying to find in different ways who didn't really want that as part of the series. So, I included that as part of, what I was doing for them. And so, it does definitely, help with a lot of that too, or a lot of the research too, because of, the whole idea of fan research, family, or friends, associates, and neighbors, family, associates, and neighbors, whatever. But basically, like, you might build it out and find that, your third cousin, whatever, wrote a whole book about this stuff, and it was just named something weird, and you didn't even realize, or you wouldn't have realized that it was your family unless you found that cousin through the research. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Not quite sure what you mean. So if you can clarify the question a bit more about like, what you mean, what's that like in terms of like just the research or the reaching out to people, or like, yeah, I don't know. Antonio, how good are the haplogroups assigned by YFUL? I mean, they're pretty spot on as far as I know. I mean, the thing you have to remember is that YFUL is defining it by their system, by their terminal SNPs that they have in their system. And so your haplogroups might be different between YFUL and Big Y on Family Tree DNA, just because some of the people that are in one database aren't in the other, and thus the terminal SNP of your haplogroup, your subgroup or whatever subclade that is, that it's going to have a different name than what it is in the other one. But when you look at the descendancy, it should basically match up. So, really, I don't have any reasons to distrust it. Okay. Anna, hello everyone. I was wondering where you might be. You're usually one of the first to comment. But yeah, good to have you. Maven, weird question. Now that you can get DNA from objects with commercial products, would you ever accept a job from a family that police gave up investigating? Well, I mean, if the police are investigating it, then I mean, I don't know if I necessarily would. Like, I guess you're saying like if a family somehow was like got a hold of the DNA profile for whatever reason and were able to give it to me. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, for one, I will say, while I do take clients right now, I largely lean towards just having one-on-one consultations, and I rarely take actual clients for like research projects. So that's one thing. But if someone were to approach me with this, I don't know. I guess it'd feel, I'd really need to learn a lot of the details of the case, because if the police are investigating it, then there might be a lot of limitations on this. Yeah. So, I mean, the police do investigate Doe cases as well, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'd have to learn all the details, I guess. Timmy, is it common that you have is it common to have you ancestors to be in the same place? All my fierce ancestors that I know so far were in Lithuania, never left. Might have found some Polish family, but is not confirmed. Oh, direct. All my direct ancestors that I know of so far were in Lithuania, never left. Yeah, I mean, especially considering the history of the area, and even more than anything, your family, you said, was Mariampol. Think about how close to the border that is to both Poland and to why can't I think of it, with Belarus? I gotta look up a map. Yeah, Belarus. Why couldn't I think of that? Okay, so let's just throw this up here. So I mean, you've got Mariampol right here. You got Poland over here. You got Belarus over here. I mean, you know, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, all the different stuff in terms of the Russian Empire. Yeah, it's one of those things that, I mean, it's common to have a lot of ancestors in that one place, but in all honesty, if you start to build out your tree perfectly, my guess is you'd start to quickly find a lot of ancestors that were in other places. So I guess, like if you were able to build out your entire family tree to all of your fourth great grandparents, identify all of them, and every single one was in Mariampol, I think that'd be pretty rare coming from the same place like that. But I don't know. That's also just assumptions. I don't know for sure. So yeah. Okay. Drea, there was some stuff in local news about a descendancy research project that was moving to a different group, and it just reminded me that this was a thing that existed. Yeah, so I guess what you're probably talking about is like the descendancy research projects with like the Tulsa massacre of 1921. Which I don't know if they necessarily call it a descendancy research project, but basically, yeah, here we go. The 1921 Tulsa Identification Project. So, I mean, they're utilizing descendancy research and probably trying to identify living family members of, you know, the people that were murdered in this massacre. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a very interesting sort of research to do, any sort of descendancy research, because knowing the history of the family and then building down and seeing what happens with the descendants, it's just one of those things that I think, like, especially, you know, in terms of just politics in present day and stuff, it gives you kind of a view that, at least for me, kind of makes me lean towards certain ways of thinking, you know. So, Maven, I've seen a lot of abandoned cold cases, but maybe some situation would allow you to DNA test from a strange object from a crime scene the police had but didn't pursue. Well, I mean, police aren't just going to be handing out objects that are evidence. One of the big things when it comes to investigative genetic genealogy is chain of custody. But on top of that, the difficulty of if that was the case, one, the family would have to get a forensic lab to agree to DNA test the object on their own dime, which they wouldn't necessarily be getting the evidence themselves. They would probably have to do that through law enforcement anyway. But I don't know if they would be allowed anyway. But if they did allow it, they'd have to find a lab that would be willing to process this other object from the scene. And then once they did that, then they would also have to pay for the forensic lab to do all the imputation and everything, send that extracted DNA to a lab to then process and sequence it into a genealogy profile. And then you have your, you know, then you can upload it. So they'd have to be at that point, because even at that point, they might try to sequence it and then they get only a 72% call read out of the DNA. That is too low to be a viable genealogy profile. And so they're, you know, even if they approach me and be like, well, there's nothing I can do with it. Antonio, another question from is if it's feasible to use DNA from a tooth in a commercial test, 23andMe/Ancestry. I have the crazy idea to test one of my great grandfathers, died 1946, 1955. So 23andMe and Ancestry do not test teeth, but you can get teeth DNA tested. They, depending on how well preserved it is and all of that is going to, change how well you're going to actually be able to get a DNA profile from it. But basically, if you send in your DNA, or not your DNA, if you send that tooth in for DNA testing, you'd need to send it to one of the artifact testing labs. But I don't know if they accept teeth, which if that's the case, you'd have to find a forensic lab who'd be willing to take it themselves. I certainly think it'd be a viable option in the future. I think once, more companies come out, a lot of this testing becomes much easier to do, and they basically refine the process further and further. Hopefully it will become much more budget friendly, I guess. Because if you were to go this route, you're probably looking at a lot of money. Because I don't think the two available companies that do artifact testing are Genetic Legacies, which is actually owned by this company, Intermountain Forensics, who interestingly enough is owned by the company I used to work for, DNA Labs International. But they run Genetic Legacies, which used to be called Keepsake DNA, and then the older company was To the Letter DNA. Now they accept dentures, smoking pipes, envelopes, stamps, all that stuff, but I don't know if they accept actual teeth. So yeah. Say hello to Richard Janoff, my friend who is watching you for the first time. Well, hello, Richard. Oh, I meant the family had, not police. I mean, I guess it'd be just, if the family has it, that's just kind of weird. But the issue is, if the family has it, there's a lot of things to consider too. Like, for one, how did they store it? To who handled it? Did like a lot of family members handle it? Did only one family member handle it? Then they put it in a bag and nobody else has touched it since, or what? Because like for a lot of pieces of evidence, when they're first doing the initial extractions and testing of things and seeing what's going on with it, if any police officers, if any law enforcement or anyone in any lab handled it in a way where it could be contaminated, those people have to submit a standard for comparison, basically their own DNA profile for comparison, so that if their DNA was contaminating it, they'd be able to figure it out. Yeah. So, Gazillion, sorry, duty called different Nunes vase than these were still used separately by the early 1700s. Yeah, the Nunes vase name is really difficult in of itself because, both of them are just kind of such high up, or they're both so high up in terms of like the most common Spanish and Portuguese names. So yeah. Okay, let's see. So yeah, I see Timmy talking about the Lithuania stuff. So very cool, very cool. Yeah, I was thinking extract some material from the tooth, pulverize it. Not sure if it is a word, and mix in their liquid. Not sure that would work. Oh well. I guess in a sense, I don't know, that is actually how they get DNA from stuff, is they basically pulverize it, mix it into like a water, and then they're able to get the DNA that way. Or they use, there's like other ways too, like the MVAC, which is kind of like a water suction sort of vacuum type of thing. But yeah, I guess you could try it. That'd be certainly an interesting thing to try. But the only thing is, you probably only have the one tooth. So if you pulverize it, then, if it doesn't work, then you're out of luck. And that'd be even worse if you did that. And then like 2 years later, it's like, new DNA test, send in Ancestry's teeth and get it sequenced. No issues. Maven, have you kept up with the Zodiac killer and the guy who's trying to prove it was his grandpa, who was the lead detective and officer who found some of the murder scenes? I have not. So, yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't follow a lot of true crime stuff. I know that's really big, and like I've done a couple of interviews on some podcasts. I've done a couple of, I've done talks about it. Obviously I'm doing this stream. I obviously worked in the field for almost 5 years. But yeah, I don't know. I've never been like huge true crime. I do enjoy some true crime stuff. I've watched 48 hours and forensic files and, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. So, Timmy, anyway, bye, GeneaVlogger. Not sure where you are in the world, but stay safe. We have a storm here, strong winds. Well, stay safe yourself, Timmy. Thank you for being here. And I missed this. Gazillion, no poet in your family then. Okay, so that Nunes vase, or those Nunes and vases you were finding, Nuneses. Yeah, I was just asking about the Zodiac killer because the guy who's claiming it was his grandpa talked about how all of the DNA from crime scenes ended up contaminated by only by his grandpa. Interesting. Yeah, well, the thing is I mean, if it was contaminated by his grandpa, then for them to be able to, for sure tell that apart from the other DNA, they would need his grandfather's DNA specifically and not his. So if like that guy who's the grandson is trying to do the DNA test to do it, well, unfortunately, he's got a large majority of his DNA that is not going to be helpful. And if it just happens to be that whoever the Zodiac killer was like some distant relative to this guy too, somehow, that'd be kind of weird. But like, then they might get confused or, yeah. So that'd be an issue because he only only inherits about 25% from his grandpa. So 75% about of his DNA will not be useful for that. His grandpa was apparently a neo-Nazi and wife beater. Well, fun. So, all right. Well, I think with that, I'm probably going to end the stream here. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Once again, next week, I will be meeting with Max Miller on this channel for a live stream. We'll be talking about Max's family history, the episodes that have come out so far. Might even talk a little bit about some of the stuff in some of the upcoming episodes, but don't want to give too much away. And yeah, so be sure to mark your calendars for that. I'm going to try to get a notification thing up here pretty soon so everyone can have it in their stuff. But thank you all so much. You all have a wonderful rest of your Friday, or if it's already Saturday or Sunday, or not Sunday for you, if it's already Saturday, have a wonderful weekend. Try and stay warm. I know it's cold out there. So I'm Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger. I'm out. I'll see y'all later. Bye.